New ULM Warhawks athletic director John Hartwell on Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. Hopefully you've been enjoying this week's episodes. Executive Director of the Senior Bowl, Jim Nagy, new head coach of the Texas State Bobcats, G.J. Kinney, and today's episode, new ULM Athletic Director, John Hartwell. And I do not ask a lot of questions, all right? The best interviews are when the interviewee does most of the talking, and that is the case with this one. John Hartwell goes into it. He doesn't want to hear about budgetary issues for ULM. He's giving the coaches homework and department heads homework is going to be the first thing that he does. And he talks about how to get more fans to the stadium and the arena. So let's get right into it. It is ULM new athletic director John Hartwell on Locked On Sunbelt. Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Really thrilled and honored to have our next guest. Just accepted the ULM Warhawks athletic director's job last week. He is actually a Mobile native. Rumors have it that my morning show host on Sports Radio 105.5 WNSP, Lee Shervanian, called his high school basketball games. That may mean that Lee is really old. Well, he is, or John Hartwell is really old. Either way, coming from Utah State and going to ULM, John, Dave Schultz, thanks so much for hopping on Locked On Sunbelt, and congratulations.
I appreciate that, Dave. Thanks for having me on, and hello out there to all the Port City listeners. Yes, I am a native, so as folks have said, a return to the Sunbelt. I spent 3 years at Troy as the AD from 2012 to 15, but our family is really excited about the opportunity at ULM and quite frankly, to be members of the Monroe community too. And it was something that, until about 10 days ago, really was not on my radar screen. But, after a handful of phone calls and really what cemented the deal for me a week ago last Monday night, I spent about 3 hours with President Ron Berry and his wife over dinner and just talking about the future of ULM athletics. And, it's no secret. And people have talked about, gosh, one of the hardest FBS jobs in the country, one of the lowest FBS budgets. Why would you go take that? And, I've kind of been one of those who likes to take opportunities that some other people may see as obstacles, say, gosh, why in the world, would you do that? It's going to take some heavy lifting. You're going to have to put a shoulder to it. And yeah, that's true. But again, back to that conversation, a few days ago with President Berry, the university is totally committed to athletics. He is committed to athletics. They just came out with a new strategic plan. One of the 5 pillars of the university's strategic plan is athletics excellence. And they know that can't happen without an investment and further funding. And part of that is where I come into the equation, because surely we're going to look to some more, revenue opportunities from within the university family. But it's going to be my job to help raise it from outside too. And that's, a combination of things, whether it's ticket sales, corporate sponsorships, philanthropic giving, those things. And I think one of the things that really resonated with President Berry and some others was, hey, look at my last 2 stops. Troy, Alabama, you're kind of in a triangle, if you will, between Tuscaloosa, Auburn, Tallahassee, other schools in the state that have, fans and donors. But really my approach there was, hey, your first check may go to Auburn, Alabama, or Florida State, or whoever it may be, but you live in the Troy area. Your business is here. So the success of Troy athletics, is important to the economic growth of the area. And Utah State was the same way. You're kind of in the shadows of the University of Utah and BYU. So I look at this at Monroe as an opportunity. Again, there are a lot of LSU folks in the area. There's some Tulane, there's some other people, but Monroe is a pretty significant, I think about 140,000 people. If you put West Monroe in there too, it's even larger. So it's an area where there are some thriving economic factions. And I think, again, the success of Warhawk athletics can raise all boats and improve the economic environment there within the area. So again, I feel like there's a commitment from the university. There's some really good people within athletics and within the community. And I think in terms of a vision and some leadership and a glass half full approach, I think people are really excited about it. So I was asking the first interview, a question, and the preface to that question was, well, we have the lowest FBS budget, or the second lowest FBS budget in the country. And so I politely tried to cut them off right there. And I said, well, I'll be glad to answer the question, but first I want to clarify something. If I'm fortunate enough to be the director of athletics here at ULM, we can't control what people outside say, but within, we're not going to use that phrase, because basically what that's doing is saying we don't have any money and so we suck. And that, again, that to me, that's a glass half empty approach. And I want to make sure that we take the glass half full approach and look at the opportunities we have. Don't look at the deficiencies that may be there, because obviously there are challenges. But those are things that we recognize, and we're going to work from day one. We're already working. I don't start for about 3 weeks, but we're going to work on those things right off the bat and make sure that our student athletes and our coaches have the resources necessary to be successful in the classroom, on the fields of play, and ultimately in the game of life. I mean, that's what we're in the business for.
We're talking with John Hartwell, new ULM athletic director. You've already endeared yourself to Warhawks fans as someone who was in the middle of that for a little bit. The whole UL and ULM situation has been, decided. That doesn't change the fact that you did a good job of getting under Raging Cajuns fan skins with the whole la thing and everything along that line, probably from your Troy days. So, and then when I got into that, I just didn't understand it at all about, 8-9 years ago, when I first got to Louisiana and Lafayette. All right, but having said that, that was great. So your first step, forget these next 3 weeks when you're trying to figure out everything out and then, directions to the stadiums and everything like that. What is the first thing that you're doing? Or let's talk about it. Let's talk about it over these next 3 weeks. What is your first step? You must have, this is what has to happen first, this happened second, and this third, and then we can go and talk about, improving facilities or something along those lines.
Sure. I think it's really important to assess the culture within the program. And I did that at Troy. I did it at Utah State. I'll revert back to my days in private business and being a business major undergraduate, doing a SWOT analysis. So I'm going to have every single coach, head coach, assistant coaches, right on down, every staff member, and some select student athletes, some of the student athlete advisory committee captains, all of those do a SWOT analysis. Basically, I want them to list 3 items under each category: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And for the coaches and student athletes, they're going to get double duty, because I'm going to ask them to do it for their individual sport and secondly, for their perception of the department as a whole. So that's about 2/3 of that one pager. The bottom 3 items are the bottom 3 lines. I'm going to ask them, say, in your opinion, who are the 3 most important people in Warhawk athletics, and tell me why you think that. They can be anonymous. They can sign their name to the sheet of paper. Any of those things. But I am going to gather those, and then I'm going to obviously meet with each head coach individually, with the department heads and everything else very quickly. I mean, probably over the course of the first 2 weeks, just to assess the culture. And I think that's really important stepping in. You're going to hear things. I've already heard things about programs, about individuals, everything else. But I want to get in there and see it myself, because, again, somebody's perception of somebody else is, as you know this, having been in this business, it's in all likelihood skewed in some ways. And so to be able to look at that, finances are a huge thing. I've got copies of budgets already, looking at things that need to be done, capital projects, what's out there in a master plan. Part of my encouragement from talking to President Barry last week are some funds that are allocated for a renovation of the basketball arena, as well as a practice facility to go along with it, because I know one of the huge issues is men's and women's basketball and volleyball all sharing the same venue and practice times and everything else in there. So looking at that, some other things, they've got what I would call a really nice baseball facility, really nice softball, just got that done too. Football is getting a new turf. There are some improvements that need to be done there. So getting in quickly and assessing those areas. And I talked about the SWOT analysis. That's important from within, but I also want to do that with some key leaders on campus, as well as some of the donor base as well.
All right, let's take a timeout. We'll hear more from new ULM Athletic Director John Hartwell after this. But let me tell you a little bit about FanDuel. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On, because they're their #1 sportsbook in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet on Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid for your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's get back to our interview with new ULM Athletic Director John Hartwell. He discusses on how to increase attendance for Warhawks sporting events. We're talking with John Hartwell, new ULM Warhawks Athletic Director on Locked On Sunbelt. All right, so one of the things everybody has an issue with, and it really isn't only college sports, pro sports, how to get more people into the stands. But one of the things that's been an issue, and that has been an issue for ULM. So a kind way of saying that, what I hear is when, coaches tell me going to ULM is a really hard place to play because not a lot of people are there, right? It's not a hard place to play because the football stadium is packed out and we can't hear it. It's because we got to get ourselves jacked up because no one's there. The arena is spacious and, you can hear, you can communicate really well, but you got to, you have to motivate yourself. You can't motivate yourself from the other fans, right? Because that's the deal. So how do you get more people to come to the games? Because the winning it's amazing on how it's turned around, right? When I said it on the radio last year, when Terry Broughton took the football coaching job, hardest coaching job in D1, and he has started to turn things around. They are, forget about necessarily winning, but they are competitive. Before it was embarrassing. Keith Richard, right? They haven't won more than 5 games in the Sun Belt for basketball since 18-19. They've already won 6 games this year. So the winning is starting to come. How do you get more fans into the stadiums to help out and support the home teams?
Yeah, great point, Dave. And clearly creating a better home court advantage, home field advantage is going to be important throughout. And, like you said, sports marketing 101, winning puts butts in seats.
Right.
And that is starting to happen, but we've got to make sure that the atmosphere on game day is really appealing. And I think it starts with the students. And I've heard that already, that, student attendance is not that great. And, sometimes it's, I'll speak specifically to football. If LSU is playing at the same time the Warhawks are playing, a lot of students are going to the local bars or driving to Baton Rouge to go to the game, as opposed to coming to the game. So we've got to incentivize students. We've got to develop better relationships between athletics and the general student body, and do some things there. And I think those are things that we can do. And again, you're talking about, a metropolitan area of about 200,000 people. Yes, I clearly understand that Ruston and La Tech are only 30 minutes to the west, but I think there are some things that we can do to start building that right away. And like you said, Terry has done a good job in football. Keith in basketball, 6 wins already. I told him, I said, man, you raised the bar pretty high. The day that I'm announced, you guys go into the Henderson Center in Huntington, West Virginia, and beat first place Marshall in double overtime. That's pretty serious there. And it was funny. I don't know if you had a chance to look at the video post game of Keith doing that little dance, but I was kind of afraid that he had dislocated a hip.
Oh goodness! No,
haven't seen that. Go back and see it. It's worthwhile.
Okay.
And that is one of the beauties there of why we do what we do. The passion for college sports is because so many relationships interwoven. So I put out on Twitter that day, and that game was last Thursday. So the first time, and unbeknownst what would happen, many years later, but the first time there was ever an interaction between Keith Richard and John Hartwell was 1986. And I'm not sure if the first game was in Charleston or the first game was in Huntington, but he was an assistant coach for Rick Huckabee at Marshall University. And I was a junior basketball player at the Citadel. So, fast. And it may take a calculator for folks to go from 2023 back to 1986. That's been a few years.
Yeah, I was told there would be no math on Locked On Sunbelt. All right, let's take another time out. We'll get more and wrap up our conversation with new athletic director from ULM, John Hartwell. But first, a quick reminder, we're having a great time. It is Senior Bowl week here in Mobile, and Locked On has you covered. Locked On is here at the Senior Bowl. Get inside analysis from the hosts that cover the NFL's next generation in college and find out which NFL draft boards these players will be climbing, all in one location. Subscribe to Locked On NFL Draft for nightly live shows from the Senior Bowl. One more tonight, Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time. All right, let's wrap it up here with John Hartwell. Usually when the new AD is getting hired, you got to hire either basketball coach or most likely a football coach. That is not the case now at ULM. Basketball teams to be heading in the right direction. Football team is heading in the right direction. Does that make life easier for John Hartwell? We're with John Hartwell, new ULM Warhawks athletic director. All right, does it make it easier for you being the AD that maybe, Terry Bowden's 66, but he's doing a good job, that maybe the first thing you don't have to do is hire a coach? As of right now, I presume, ULM wins a few more games and Keith Richard keeps his job and Terry Bowden doing a good job, going to keep his job. When you don't have to hire, the football coach or the basketball coach, it seems like you can concentrate on the things we've been talking about, and which will help the program a lot faster.
Yeah, that does make it much easier. One, obviously, if you're winning, you don't have to make changes normally, and it'll allow me some more time to get in. I've got, I think, a decent understanding, having been in this league before for 3 years, growing up in Mobile, and my wife and I both said this as we drove through the residential areas of Monroe for the first time, again, literally about a week ago, because my points of reference for Monroe were either going east and west on I-20 through there, or north and south on 165 from El Dorado, which is where Arkansas, where my wife is from, and going south to Monroe to get on the interstate. But, not but a couple of stones throws from campus, there are some unbelievable residential areas of Monroe that in a whole lot of ways remind me of Mobile. I mean, you've got the huge magnolia trees, you got the live oaks and the Spanish moss, and some unbelievably good seafood. So there's a lot of great things, not only about the university, but also about the community of Monroe that we're looking forward to. But I think the Sun Belt knowledge is going to help a bunch, and getting up to speed with some of the locals. And there are several. This tells you about the Monroe community. And in a conversation, one of my first conversations with Coach Bowden last week, he said, "Hey, this is home for my wife and I." Said, when I decide to hang up coaching, I want to stay here and help you raise money. So that told me right there a lot about the community and a lot about the way he feels about it. But again, not only the opportunity at ULM athletics, but I think the Sun Belt Conference as a whole, and I've had this conversation, with most of the ADs in the league the last week, and with Keith Gill too, because most of the ADs I know, obviously Joel Erdman has been there since I was at Troy. Charlie Cobb was at Georgia State. Some of the others, Brian Maggard, Doug Gillen, and then some of the newcomers too. Jeremy McLean, I've known for a long time. He followed me at Troy. Wood Seelig at Old Dominion is an old friend. So stepping into that room is not going to be that unusual. But here's the thing about the Sun Belt that is so exciting to me. You look at today's Sun Belt versus back, in June of 2015 when I left Troy, is much different, is much better, is much more competitive. And kudos to the athletic directors, the coaches, the presidents who've made the commitment to athletics. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say Keith Gill has done a heck of a job in the league. But you take that perspective, having just come from the Mountain West Conference, and I firmly believe that the Mountain West and the Sun Belt, with the Sun Belt having an edge, and I'll tell you why in a minute, are the two leagues that, with UCF, Houston, and Cincinnati departing the American and going to the Big 12, I think those two leagues are going to distinguish themselves as the two premier group of five leagues. And quite frankly, I think the Sun Belt has the upper edge on becoming what the AAC, arguably has been for the last 6 or 7 years. And that's really exciting, not only from, a league perspective, but I think, as I've told the folks at ULM, excuse me, the opportunities to enhance the image and branding of the individual institution, as well as the conference, as well as the financial benefits of that, are things that we need to take advantage of.
Well, I don't know if you're a mind reader or not, but that's where I was going to next. So I don't, the best interviews, John, are when I ask the least amount of questions, and I think I got 4 in. So you did a really good job. They're going to love you there in Monroe. John Hartwell, new ULM Warhawks athletic director. Really appreciate your time. Locked On Sunbelt. I know you're busy. Congratulations, and I hope to have you on the podcast once again. Thank you so much.
Hey, Dave, great to be on, and I hope to get to see you in Pensacola at the Sunbelt basketball tournament, if not before.
Special thanks to John Hartwell, new athletic director for the ULM Warhawks, for hopping on Locked On Sunbelt. Really appreciate his time. You can imagine how busy he is. Thank you for watching and listening. I am your host. Until next time, it is Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day.